Welcome to today's edition of the Statler Financial Radio Show. Your financial security is our business. Have a question for the team? Call today, 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
Believe it or not, we're halfway through the year of 2024. Now, the question is, how are your finances doing? Well, today we'll walk you through your mid-year checkup on your retirement. Thanks for joining us today on the Statler Financial Radio Show with Philip Statler. He's the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin. We've got a great show for you lined up today. Philip, let's start with some stats, okay, on how Americans are doing when it comes to saving for retirement. A couple stats that I have for you today. The first one is a new benchmark report compared to 27 different industries found that people in hospitality and food services ranked in last place in retirement account contributions. Another stat, in first place, certified public accountants, despite their contributions, falling about 10%. And then another one for you is, as a whole, the total number of employer-sponsored plans dropped and the total number of assets decreased by about 20% across all industries. Philip, when you hear these numbers, do you see anything alarming here?
I think when you look at these numbers, Danielle, we think of a couple things. One is the first stat, when it comes to hospitality and food services, I don't think that really surprises anybody. I mean, they are probably some of the least paid people in the employment cycle. And so when you consider that you would think that their contributions would be on the lower side of that. And so that makes perfectly good sense to me in terms of that process, and that they are on the lower end of that scale. First place, certified public accountants. I will tell you that maybe surprises me just a little bit, coming from the accounting and tax background, that they won for I think the second year in a row, they became the first place industry. But they should know, right? They're the ones that should be planners and think about their future. And I mean, they would probably be in the top 5 anyway of industries I would think of. And I think contributions falling short, if you think about it, inflation is definitely a part of that equation, right? I mean, if inflation takes more and more of your money, that's less and less money you've got to put into retirement planning. And I think that goes to the third point as well, in terms of decrease in assets across all industries. That 20%, I think a lot of that is probably just due to contributions declining because of inflation as a whole.
Philip, you're right. As we're looking at these numbers and we're talking about the middle of the year, it's a really good time to review that plan. We've talked about before the uptick in the number of people retiring now, and it's actually what some analysts call peak 65. So are we starting to see impacts from people retiring and moving out of their 401ks and IRAs?
I mean, I think we are. And one of the statistics I keep hearing is, there's basically about 10,000 people a day that are turning age 65. And that's an incredible number when you think about it. That's huge. That's the biggest you're going to see in the baby boom sector. And so from here, it'll start tapering down. We are seeing more and more people retiring. I'm getting more and more phone calls of folks, hey, I'm getting ready to retire. I'm thinking about retiring. I need to see if I can afford to retire. I mean, all these type of things. And when they do pull the trigger to retire, they typically don't want to leave their money in their 401k. They want more options. They want that money in different places. And so we are seeing quite a few people that are moving money out of their 401ks and starting to use that by creating some income planning.
Philip, you said 10,000 people are retiring a day. That number is huge. And so for people who are planning to retire this year, what might they want to keep in mind before moving that money out of their retirement accounts?
Well, that's 10,000 people turning age 65. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to retire, Danielle, but they're turning 65. They could retire. But what does that really mean? That means that look, they are at the point they need to be doing some planning. I tell people, look, when you turn 55, you really need to start looking to see, am I on track? Do I have a plan in place to make sure that my retirement is going to be everything I had hoped it to be? And so now's the time. If you're 65, it's not too late. Better to start now than not do it at all, but because you want a plan to run off of. If you don't have a plan, then you're planning to fail in retirement. And so we don't want that to happen to anybody. And that's the exact reason I developed the core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. We look at three core things there: risk, taxes, and income. All three are vitally important when it comes to your retirement. Look, if you would like a simple 30-minute conversation, we'll talk to see if you are on track for the retirement you always dreamed of. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That number again is 863-877-1188.
There's no cost or obligation. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Don't hesitate to give Philip and his team a call at 863-877-1188. Philip, as we're talking about the midway checkup list when it comes to checking your finances, we are midway through 2024, which is crazy. Like, this year's just flying by. But I want us to walk through a mid-year checkup on our finances, because some people may not know what that looks like. Can you walk us through, let's say, the first 5 things that we need to look at?
Absolutely, Danielle. So if we look at kind of those first things that we should be looking at is making sure that you're up to date on your beneficiary designations. Life happens and we forget to make changes every now and then. And I think it's important that we take a minute, stop, pull out our documents, make sure that we have the correct beneficiaries on all of our accounts, because it's just that important. When it comes to that process. The other thing is you want to make sure that you're staying within your budget. Especially, hey, we're hitting summertime now, vacations, a lot of activities are starting to ramp up, and we don't want to fall astray from our budgetary process. We want to stay in line, make sure we're still making those contributions to our retirement accounts, and maybe even pumping them up a little bit if we're getting closer to retirement. And then, it's midway through the year. It's also a great time, Danielle, to take a minute and review your current portfolio. And maybe you need to make some adjustments. Maybe the volatility is put you in a different spot. You've got some great gains. Maybe it's time to take some of those gains out and go back to where you were and reallocate that portfolio. But it's a great time to do that as we sit here in this kind of first month of summer. It's a great time to take a look at where you are and see how your portfolios have been progressing throughout this year. I would say that maybe one of the other ones to do would be, look at taxes. Unfortunately, Danielle, a lot of people, they don't think about taxes until after December when they're getting ready to file their tax return. Right. And honestly, it's too late. You can't make any planning. You can't plan anything or make any changes if that's what you do. So take this little opportunity now just to kind of look at your taxes. What does it look like for you? Are you on track? We had a lot of people last year, because I have a tax practice too, that got caught short because the withholding tables changed, the W-4s changed, and they ended up, people that usually never owed money ended up with a balance due. So take a minute, look at your withholding to make sure that it's really coming out on par with what you owed last year in taxes. So that's, I would say that's kind of a huge deal there. And if you're charitably minded, let's look at charitable contributions. If you're 70 and a half or older and you are charitably inclined, you should be using what we call QCDs. And if you're not, you definitely need to be giving us a call to find out what that process looks like and how you can benefit from using your IRA to make charitable contributions. Danielle, that's just so huge. And I don't see enough people actually taking advantage of it.
Now, Philip, this is really good right here. I'm writing down these notes to make sure that we're all getting these items on our checklist. You talked about making sure you're reviewing that beneficiary designations, updating that information, staying within your budget. Like, this is why we need a financial advisor. And then you also talked about reviewing that portfolio due to the market volatility and then discussing taxes. You're right. We don't think about it until it's time, but having someone like you near us is definitely going to get us there. Philip, what are some other items that we need to have on that checklist as we're going through this midway checklist?
Well, I think one other one that I would add to that and kind of put us halfway through is looking at your financial goals and making sure you've got a clear and precise destination in mind. What are we trying to accomplish and how are we going to get there? Are we on track for the goal that we have set for ourselves? And if not, what do we need to be doing to tweak that so that we are in the right place, heading in the right direction to get to the goal that you've set for yourself? And now's just a great time to look at that and make sure we're on track.
You know, we talked about it briefly, but even though, like you said, we're out of the tax season now, but there are, like you said, there are a couple of tax-related items that we also need on that checklist. So what is the difference between getting your taxes prepared every year and then looking for opportunities to save on taxes in the future through tax planning?
Well, I think one is you're looking in the rearview mirror, right? Tax preparation takes everything you've done the last year and puts it on Uncle Sam's tax forms and says, this is what you owe. That's not tax planning. That's just preparing your tax return for the government. Tax planning is looking ahead at what tax rates are going to look like. Should I be putting money into a Roth versus a traditional IRA? If I have a 401k, does it have a Roth provision? Should I be using that Roth provision versus, using the traditional? So there are some things there that we can do. If you're charitably inclined, what does that look like? We can look at doing some advanced planning when it comes to charitable contributions. So all of that comes into play when it comes to our core retirement design, putting all that stuff together. Danielle, it's why I really do what I do. That's why I took the time to develop our process, a core retirement design, to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. And it's a simple process. It takes a 30-minute call with me where I'll walk them through the process and also make sure that they are doing what they need to be doing to get to where they want to be for retirement. It's a simple process. It starts with a 30-minute phone call. Give me a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis.
We want to remind you that there's no cost or obligation to have a phone call with Philip and his team. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Again, 863-877-1188. Now, when you plan a vacation and you know how to research flights and hotels and look at some of those savings, right? Well, how can you do the same thing for your retirement plan? Well, we're going to be discussing how to create that 5-star retirement plan coming up next. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you are paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 270-201-7080. That's VISIT to 270-201-7080.
Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial Services can help you uncover any hidden fees in your retirement accounts. Call today to schedule a time to talk about your situation. 863-285-3815. That's 863-285-3815. When you're close to retirement, every dollar matters. Would you like to know where your money is going? Find out what kind of fees you're really paying. Statler Financial Services can help. 863-285-3815. 3815. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler. He's the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. Now we're talking about what it looks like creating a 5-star retirement plan. Well, picture a 5-star luxury resort. You have lush greenery, you have scenic views, and top-notch customer service. Now picture a run-of-the-mill roadside motel. Are you going into that? It's a roadside motel, probably is not going to be able to achieve that 5-star rating because I'm sure you know something is missing. Well, look at it like this. If you could rate your retirement plan, how many stars would you give it? So, Philip, let's take this a step further. We're trying to see how ready we are for retirement. And I love this analogy of how can we make sure that our plans have a 5-star rating? What does that look like?
Well, I think that when we look at that, we have to look at 5 main points that I believe that you need to have to achieve that 5-star rating, right? We need to have a reliable income plan that is consistent and conservative. We need to have a wealth management strategy. We need to have a tax efficiency strategy. We want to be tax efficient in retirement. We need to have a plan to address healthcare. And then lastly, an estate planning strategy. What does that look like for you? And I know, I call them stars, but in reality, they're just 5 key components of having a great comprehensive retirement plan, Danielle.
And I love that you listed all of them out for us, Philip. And what I would love for us to do is you make this sound easy every time. So what is the first step when we're talking about building this overall 5-star, but like you mentioned, it's components to an overall comprehensive retirement plan. What is the first step for building a reliable income plan?
Well, I guess you would start with how much income are you going to need, right? In retirement, what does that look like? And I think that there's some misconceptions here because a lot of folks have come to believe that, well, I only need half my income, or I only need, 70% of my income because I'm not going to pay as much in taxes and blah, 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 right? I mean, that's the thinking a lot of people have. And what we are actually finding is that, we really need to come somewhere greater than that number, somewhere probably between 70 and 100% of your current income. And that's really if you're debt free. If you're not debt free, then we definitely need to probably 100%, right? So that's kind of the first thing is how much do we need? And that comes down to what are we going to spend? So we have to kind of put together that budgetary item and determine what our spending is going to look like in retirement. And then from there, we can build the income. Where's it going to come from? How are we going to get it? Where's it going to rest? I use a bucket system where we bucket out money. We got this bucket for a certain period of time, and we've got 4 or 5, maybe 6 buckets of money that we're using to create that income over your lifetime. And so it's just having that process in place to be able to work through it.
Philip, you brought up a good point of making sure we have enough money to last us as long as we live. So what are some of the tools for generating some income in retirement?
Well, I think when we look at tools, there are obviously bank accounts. I mean, we've got Social Security, whether you call that a tool or not. I think it is to the standpoint of when do you take it? You can minimize it or maximize it, right? And that becomes part of the process and the tool part of Social Security. There are things like annuities that were created specifically to help generate income. Now, when we talk about annuities, there's, obviously you draw a little T account, Ben Franklin, and there's positive and negatives, right? So you have to weigh those out to make sure it's going to work the way you want it to, and it's going to add value to your income planning process. A lot of people, they have their portfolios. They have dividend stocks. Some people are just using CDs right now because interest rates are so high. So there's all kinds of tools out there. Some people have rental property, right, that are paid for, and that's generating a lot of income for them. So there's a lot of tools out there. You just got to know how to put those tools to work in your current circumstances. And again, that comes back to the process of why I developed the core retirement design. The core retirement design looks at three key components. It looks at risk in your portfolio, and it measures that. It looks at taxes, not just today, but taxes down the road and what that's going to look like to you in your retirement. And lastly, an income plan. Having that income plan in place so that you are confident in the retirement income that you're going to get month in and month out. The core retirement design. Folks, give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to schedule your core retirement analysis. Again, that number is 863-877-1188.
You know, Philip and his team have been doing this for many years, so they have experience in the questions that you have. They have answers to them, so there's no cost or obligation. All you have to do is give him and his team a call at 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Philip, can you talk about what is the difference between an income plan and a wealth management strategy?
Well, an income plan, Danielle, is setting up streams of income. A wealth management strategy is where do we put those, right? How do we get them? What is a strategy? And I look at more as a risk strategy because when we head into retirement, we cannot afford another bear market like we saw in 2000 and 2008 to wipe out everything that we've worked hard for. And so, we saw a lot of people that their 401ks were cut in half during those bear markets. And if you are getting close to retirement, that's something you cannot afford. And so we look at first diversification. We look at two types of diversification. The first type is safety versus risk. And folks, you need both buckets. You need both key components. The question is, how much do you put in each one of them? And that's part of the wealth management strategy, is determining how much goes to safety, how much goes to risk. Then the risk bucket, you've got to diversify even further. But that's really the wealth management strategy, is where do we put the assets to create the income that we're going to need in retirement?
Philip, you mentioned that word assets, and so it kind of leads me to this question of, should retirees still have a portion of their retirement assets invested in the market?
I believe they do. Now, how much is up for debate. Right. So I believe that we start with what I call the rule of 100. And the rule of 100 says, I'm going to take your age from 100. So 100 minus your age gives us a net number. If you are 65 years old, try that as 35%. So 35% is what we would be a starting point, not an ending point, but a starting point of what you might want to have invested in the market. Now, we narrow that down more by doing a risk analysis on you to determine what your risk tolerance number is on a scale of 1 to 100. And we use that to massage that number up or down, depending on what that looks like for you. But that's the key point. And I tell people, look, if you're 90 years old, you still need something, maybe 10% in the market, because that's going to help us continue to grow our money no matter what.
And I know many people have questions about this, Philip, and so it kind of makes me think and wonder, why is it important for our money to keep growing in retirement? Because we don't want it to stop, right? We want our money to last as long as we live. But why is it important for our money to keep growing?
Well, I think, Danielle, if folks think back over the last 3 years, they know why, right? Because inflation, that ugly word, has really become part of our vocabulary, unfortunately, because everything costs so much more now than it did 3 years ago. And so a way to keep up with inflation is to grow our portfolios, to grow our investments to help us through that process of keeping up with inflation. And that's one reason that we look at the stock market, because the stock market historically has helped folks keep up with inflation. And so I know it goes up and down and there's volatility involved, but that's where we have that diversification between risk and safety. And so if we get those allocations done right, then we can handle some of the ups and downs and the volatility that we see in the marketplace. But all this comes to planning. I mean, that's the bottom line. Danielle, is we have to have a plan. And that plan needs to be written so that you know what it is and you can go back to it and look at it and say, okay, yes, I'm on track. I'm okay. And that's why I developed the core retirement design to help people design that retirement they always dreamed of. That's important. You've worked hard to get to where you are, and now you need to be able to enjoy that time in retirement. Give us a call at 863-877-1188 to go through our core retirement analysis. Again, that's 863-877-1188. It starts with a simple phone call. You and I discussing where we are, what you need to do, and how you can prepare for that retirement. Again, give us a call at 863-877-1188.
Now, you don't want to make any financial decisions without fully understanding the full impact on all of the other pieces of your retirement plan. So do not hesitate to call Philip and his team at 863-877-1188 to learn more about the benefits of having a comprehensive retirement strategy. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Now, again, we were talking about what it looks like planning for that 5-star vacation, because when you plan a vacation, you know how to research flights and hotels and look for all the savings. But how can you do the same thing for your retirement plan? We're going to continue the conversation on what it looks like to create a 5-star retirement plan right after this.
It might ramp up or it could slow down, but inflation never goes away. Do you know how it could impact your retirement savings? Text VISIT to 863-877-1188. That's VISIT to 863-877-1188.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Philip Statler at Statler Financial Services agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for information about tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why Statler Financial Services was started. Philip wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement. Statler Financial is more than just 863-285-3815. Statler Financial Services, one stop for a wealth of retirement solutions. 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
I want to help you understand some things. Number one, timing of your RMD, because they could potentially push you into a higher tax bracket. Imagine how fast your savings could shrink if you rack up penalties along with taking regular withdrawals and paying taxes.
Time to retire right. This is the Statler Financial Radio Show.
Welcome back into the show. You're listening to the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler. He is the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. We're continuing the conversation of what it looks like creating that 5-star retirement plan. Because, you know, when you plan for a vacation, you know how to research the flights and hotels and look at your savings to make sure you have enough, because you want to make sure you get the most bang out of your buck. But the question is, it's also same thing for your retirement plan. Are you doing the exact same thing? It's important to make sure that you are taking the steps to help preserve your retirement savings. So, Philip, one of the areas where we can really help protect our savings, you mentioned this earlier in the list, is being tax efficient. So can you kind of explain to us the difference between tax planning and tax preparation?
Absolutely, Danielle. So it's really a simple distinction, right? Tax preparation is historic, right? Typically we get to, January, February of the year after, and now we have to do our tax return. So we're looking back to the previous year and we're taking that information and putting it on the tax forms and paying Uncle Sam what we owe him, and we're done. That's tax preparation. It's historic. There's nothing we can do to fix it after it has happened. Tax planning is looking ahead, making adjustments based on belief of what the tax system is going to look like down the road. And not just today. I mean, if we're just focused on planning for today, it'd be one thing. But we are looking at saving tax dollars, not just today, but over your retirement lifetime. If we can save, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 of taxes today by doing something different, doesn't it make sense to do that? And that's part of our core retirement design. In the tax element, we are looking for ways that we can save taxes down the road, not just for our clients, but also for their children, right? Because that becomes important is how much can we save in dollars over your lifetime and your children's lifetime. And that's the planning process. And that's what we really have to look at when it comes to tax planning.
Philip, I love this conversation because you make it sound so simple for us. So how do you approach tax planning? I would say with the goal that your clients can spend more of their retirement dollars the way that they want to.
So what we look at is, we look at what does it look like now, right? We know that tax rates are today probably the lowest that you and I will ever see. And we know that in 2026, they automatically go up unless some miracle happens, right? Which it could, but is very slim. And so we know that we're going to see some income taxes going up in 2026. And if you follow the national debt and what that looks like and interest rates going up, you can just visualize that the only way to pay that debt is going to be increased taxes down the road. And so, unfortunately, that's the belief of most of us out here, is that taxes are going to have to go up just to continue to pay the bills. And so it may make sense to pay some tax now versus paying higher taxes later. So we look at things like Roth conversions. That's a big deal. Or even just taking some money now and putting it into a non-qualified account, because taxes are lower now than what they're going to be in 2 to 3 years. But it's a process, because there's this little fine line you have to walk between, taking too much and doing Roth conversion and not taking enough. So I believe we should max out our tax bracket. So if you're in a 12% tax bracket, you need to be looking at ways that you can do Roth conversions to maximize that 12% tax bracket. If you're in the 22% tax bracket, we need to maximize the 22% tax bracket, because those tax brackets down the road are going to be a lot lower than what we're going to see. And so that's the process. And it's a big part of our core retirement design, is analyzing where you are, what tax savings are going to look like for you, and what can we do? How can we plan that out efficiently and effectively to make sure that we're paying the least amount of taxes over our retirement lifetime? The number to call to get on the schedule is 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188 to walk through our core retirement analysis. It's you and me, 30 minutes, figuring out where we are and where we need to get to. It's that simple, Danielle. It's only a phone call, right? 863-877-1188.
That's right, Philip. We like to remind our listeners that there's no cost or obligation to have a 30-minute phone call with you and your team. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Don't hesitate to call 863-877-1188. Philip, as we're continuing down the list of creating that 5-star retirement plan, you mentioned healthcare. And so that kind of leads me to this stat that I want to share with you that says, according to Fidelity, a 65-year-old couple retiring in 2022 can expect to pay an estimated of $315,000. That's after tax for healthcare in retirement. Now, that is not including long-term care. So, Philip, are retirees even aware that this steep estimate, and how can you help them prepare for that number?
Well, let me break this down in kind of my opinion and the way I look at it. And that's a 2022 number. Believe me, it won't be long before Fidelity comes out with their 2023 number and what that looks like. And it'll be more than $315,000, because I can remember a few years back, that number was $250,000. So obviously inflation is big when it comes to healthcare costs as well as everything else. And so you have to remember that big number is for a couple. So that's 2 people. And that's for your retirement lifetime. If you retire at 65, they're expecting you to live 25 to 30 years in retirement. And so if you break that down annually, it's a big number. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as hard to get your hands around as that huge number they throw out there. It is important to understand that this is why we need an income plan that allows for and gives us some inflation step-ups to help combat things like this that inflation not only does for healthcare, but other items that we have to pay for. And so I think that it's just a process that we need to understand that healthcare is going to cost more and more, and that we've got to plan that and build that into our income planning process.
Philip, what are some of the options for addressing, I would say, potential long-term care costs? Because that number I gave you earlier, it didn't include long-term care. And so what are the options for addressing the long-term care costs?
So I look at long-term care in a couple different perspectives, right? I look at first, because we didn't really have these 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, they were there, but they weren't mainstream, and that's assisted living. And so assisted living is one step in long-term care. But what I have seen, and this is true, I'm going to say in our local market, not necessarily in the Northeast or on the coast of Florida, because their prices are a lot higher than ours are. But a lot of folks in our immediate area actually can pay long-term care as far as assisted living out of their existing cash flow. Yes, is it expensive? It is expensive. But typically, if you have to go into assisted living, you're cutting out other expenses as well. And then there's nursing home. Well, that's a whole different animal, right? And so how do you pay for that? Well, you could buy long-term care insurance, way back when, and that will help offset some of the cost. There are actually life insurance contracts, life insurance that have living benefits that will help cover assisted living and nursing home. And so that's an option. There are annuities out there that have long-term care benefits where they take your benefit, their account balance, and maybe double it or triple it. There are different things out there. But let me just say, they all have pros and cons. And you need to look at them specifically and weigh those things out to make sure that they are going to make sense for you. And then lastly, if you don't do anything, then you're going to be subject to Medicaid is stepping in to help you out. Now, there's ways to plan for that as well. And I'm not the expert, but I have a team of folks that can help us walk through that process as well. So there are different avenues to take care of long-term care expenses. We just need to have the right team in place to help walk through that process, Danielle.
Now, Philip, one of the last items that you had on creating the 5-star retirement plan is estate planning. So very quickly, how does estate planning fit into an overall 5-star retirement plan?
Well, it comes back to beneficiaries, having the beneficiary designations properly listed on your accounts. And, if your estate's big enough, maybe you should have a trust. If it's not big enough, then we need to make sure that we've got beneficiaries on all of our accounts. Our bank accounts, our non-qualified accounts. You can add beneficiaries to those accounts, and you need to make sure you've done that to help bypass probate. So that's the thing. The other thing I will say when it comes to estate planning documents is, a lot of people think of a will or a trust as estate planning documents, and they are. But there's a couple other ones that I think are as important, maybe even more important, and that's power of attorneys. Having that financial and healthcare power of attorney set up is huge. And I say it this way, Danielle, because the power of attorney is going to take care of you while you are alive. The will, the trust, you're gone. You've passed away. Now, that may be a harsh way of looking at it, but the power of attorney is going to take care of you while you're here alive. And that's why I think it's ultimately important that you get those things taken care of.
Now, to recap everything that you mentioned, Philip, the 5 ways to create the 5-star retirement plan include a reliable income plan, a wealth management strategy, a tax-efficient strategy, and a plan to address healthcare, and also an estate planning strategy. I know you and your team have done this for many years. And so as you wrap up with us today, how do you help people build a retirement plan that incorporates each part? And what's the best way that we can contact you and your team?
Absolutely, Danielle. So again, that's why I created the core retirement design to help people design all parts of their retirement process. And it starts with risk analysis. How much risk do you have in your portfolio versus how much risk should you have in your portfolio based on your current circumstances? How close you are to retirement? How old are you? These are all important pieces of that puzzle. And then we look at taxes. What do taxes look like for you today? What are they going to look like for you in 5 years or 10 years? We don't know exactly, but we can make some assumptions and plan out what that may look like for you. And then we need to make sure that we've got that income plan in place. And we need to build it to make sure that we've taken care of inflation. To start that process, give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
If you have questions about retirement, don't hesitate to call Philip and the team at Statler Financial Services. They are here to guide you through a successful retirement. Again, that number you mentioned is 863-877-1188. Again, 863-877-1188. Coming up next, we're diving into our Statler Financial Radio mailbag, where we answer some of your retirement questions, so you don't want to miss out on this. We'll be right back.
Needing a second opinion on your retirement plan or to see if you are paying more than your fair share to Uncle Sam? Schedule your complimentary visit today. Text VISIT to 270-201-7080. That's VISIT to 270-201-7080.
Do you actually read your financial statements, or do they get tossed in a drawer and forgotten about? You could be making an expensive mistake by not taking the time to look at them. If you're paying high fees in your retirement portfolio, it could be costing you tens of thousands of dollars or more over your lifetime. Imagine the difference an extra $100,000 could make in your retirement. Statler Financial 15, 863-285-3815. Advisory services offered through Statler Financial Services, Inc., a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Florida.
Sounds like the mailman's here.
It's time to answer questions from the Statler Financial Mailbag.
Thanks for joining us back here on the Statler Financial Radio Show. I'm your host, Danielle J. Martin, along with Philip Statler, the president and founder of Statler Financial Services. We're diving into our Statler Financial Radio Show mailbag. Philip, this is where we get questions each and every week about all things retirement. So I'm excited to go over some of the common retirement questions. It's our favorite part of the show. Are you ready?
I'm ready to see what's in the bag today.
Okay, let's see. Our first question comes from Jane from Lake Passett. She says, I've been worried about the markets and if we'll continue to see more volatility ahead. I don't want to take any more big losses. How long should I be in cash before I try to get back into the markets?
Oh, man.
Wow.
Jane, I am sorry that you're still sitting in cash these days. That can be dangerous, and people see that all the time, right? We can't time the market. Nobody knows where the market's going to be a year from now. And obviously this year, we have a lot of stuff going on, right? And we've got elections. We're still dealing with inflation. We still have interest rate issues. So it's hard to say when is a good time to get back in the market because we don't know when the next dip is going to come or when the next bear market is going to hit and it goes back down. So I would say that really and truly in this circumstance, you need to have a well-balanced portfolio. You need to look and see what your risk number is, and then have a portfolio that's designed around that risk number. And then you just start putting some money in. Don't necessarily put it all in at one time, but put 20, 30% of it into that portfolio that matches up with your risk tolerance, and then build it from there is what I would say is a starting point.
Really good insights, Philip. I appreciate that. And Jane, thank you so much for your question. Okay, let's get to our next person. Nancy is from Sebring, and she says, I've worked at a hospital here for almost 18 years. I was planning to work a full 20 years before I retired, but now that I'm thinking about retiring early than planned, before I give my notice, how do I make sure that I'm ready to retire? Great question, Nancy.
That is a great question, Nancy, because that's good that you decided to ask the question before you pull the trigger and actually retire, right? So,
Yeah.
so Nancy, what I would do is say, look, you need to have a plan to make sure that, between Social Security and if you have a pension or if you have a 403B or 401k, that all of that, is going to be able to put together that income plan that's going to allow you to retire and enjoy it. Retiring 2 years early may not be an issue, but you don't know that unless you walk through the planning process. So if you start now and put together the plan, then you can see what that 2 years, 3 years difference might make for you. So you just need to start the plan. And that would be what I would do and recommend for you, Nancy.
Awesome.
All these questions are good questions, but it all still boils down to planning, Danielle. And again, that's why I developed the core retirement design, is to help people plan out and design that retirement they always dreamed of. Easy to do. We'll make sure that you're doing the things you need to be doing. And if not, we'll let you know and see how we may be able to help you fill in those gaps. Give us a call at 863-877-1188. That's 863-877-1188.
There's no cost or obligation to talk with Philip and his team, so do not hesitate to call that number at 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Okay, Philip, let's move on to our next question. Let's see what's in the mailbag next. We got one from Scott from Avon Park. He says, a couple of friends I work with retiring at age 62 and claiming their Social Security benefits. I thought I had to wait until 70 to take Social Security. That's his question. He thought he had to wait until 70. Philip, what's your response there?
So nobody has to wait until 70 to take their Social Security. You get the highest amount if you wait till 70 to take your Social Security. But that may not make sense for you. It depends on a lot of factors, Scott. I mean, I look at how old are you? What's your life expectancy? What's the life expectancy of your family? Those are areas that we look at when we start planning for Social Security. So you can take it at 62. However, those folks taking it at 62, they're taking a big haircut. They're taking a big deduction because they're taking it so early. The normal retirement age for most of us out here today is going to be 67. And so at 67, you get what they call your full retirement age, and then you get the full retirement amount. If you take it before that, you get a discount. If you take it after that, they actually give you more. And so that's why when we developed our core retirement design, one of the components is the income plan. And that income planning process, we look at Social Security and look at different scenarios to determine what might work best for you when it comes to deciding when to take Social Security. And so, again, it comes to planning and understanding. And I'll tell you that the folks at Social Security, they're not going to tell you when to take it. That's on you to do that planning and that research to determine what's the best for you, Scott.
That's right, Scott. We appreciate your question. Okay, Philip, let's see who's next. We have one from Bill from Sebring. He says that we were not planning to retire for several more years, but we've had some health issues come up, and now my wife isn't healthy enough to work. So I'm thinking I should stop working to help take care of her. So can you help us evaluate if this is a wise thing to do for our situation?
Well, Bill, I'm not sure exactly how to answer this one because you have to kind of understand long-term care and how that can really impact your finances and your financial decisions. So it really, you didn't say how old you were, so that's a little hard to determine what benefits might be available from that standpoint. So I think that in this case, it's going to depend on a lot of things, Bill. One is going to depend on how old you guys are and where you are in terms of Social Security. The other thing that's going to really make a difference is what do we have saved in our retirement accounts and in our other accounts to determine that. And then, if your wife can't work, then the issue is what is the life expectancy that we can have there, and are we going to have higher medical costs? Are we going to have long-term care issues that we have to deal with? And all these things, though complicated in some ways, can be planned for. I think we look back to the whole process that we need to have a plan in place, and everything starts from there. I mean, for us, when it comes to long-term care issues, we have a team that we have in place to help walk folks through that planning process. And that's how we help our clients manage the long-term care impacts that happen in their life. And so I hope, Bill, that answers your question. It's a little difficult without a little bit more information, but hopefully that helps you get in the right direction.
All right, Philip, thank you so much for all of your great insights. And thank you, listeners, for sending us your questions. If you missed out on this opportunity, it's okay. Just give us a call here at 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. But hey, in case you missed anything that we discussed today or any of our previous shows, you can go ahead and check out our website and listen to all of our shows that we've discussed previously with Philip Statler. They're all archived. All you have to do is just go to the website. And also, wherever you're listening to your podcast, you can also check out the Statler Financial Radio Show as well. So if you have questions about retirement, again, do not hesitate to call Philip and his team at Statler Financial Services. They're here to guide you through a successful retirement. We always say you do not have to plan for your retirement alone. So do not hesitate to call 863-877-1188. Again, that number is 863-877-1188. Hey, thanks for tuning in into the Statler Financial Radio Show. We'll catch you next week.
Information provided during the Statler Financial Radio Show is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information has been obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action. Annuity guarantees are based solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing company. Individuals should thoroughly review the contract for specific details of the product features and costs. Income payments and withdrawals from deferred annuities are generally taxable as ordinary income in the year they are taken. All investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. No strategy is guaranteed to be successful.
This radio show is a paid placement.
It's nice when you get everything on your list in one place, isn't it? Philip Statler at Statler Financial Services agrees. That's why he offers comprehensive retirement planning all under one roof. You shouldn't have to go one place for information about tax planning, another for estate planning, and another for retirement income planning. That's why Statler Financial Services was started. Philip wanted to build a company that could help families with all aspects of their retirement. Statler Financial is